بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. When the Prophet went to his community, they were not much different to what we are internally. They had all these complexities in their minds and in their hearts. They were like us, worried about the next day, the sustenance, their status, what people were saying about them, their position within the society, their prestige. All of these things preoccupied them, and they were totally absorbed and immersed in these things. And they found no way out. The Quran depicts a lot of these scenes through its allegories. And those people who do not believe in God are like those who are caught up in stormy waters within the depths of night. There is darkness and there are layers of clouds to the extent that when they stretch out their hand, they may not even see it. They implore God fearfully, crying, calling out to him, "Save us." And when God sails their ship to the shores of safety, they revert to their former ways. Even they implored God deep within their hearts. It's another thing altogether that they appointed a formal God as an idol. But then how different are we? We implore a very real God deep within our souls at the time of crisis. But our notion of God is Allah. Yet, when we are taken out of our situation that is troubling us, we quickly revert to our former ways. We are actually the same people that the Prophet went and addressed. Now, what did he do that was so unique that after him we cannot find in his Islam that he left with us? One of the things that happens here is that we have inherited Islam. What they did was they embraced Islam. There is a big distinction between the two. They had inherited the religions of their forefathers. And within the folds of their religions, they found no contentment. Similarly, we, in the religions that we have inherited, we find no contentment. And that's why our inner state and their inner state is one and the same. We are constantly consumed by worries. We are preoccupied. We are troubled. We are in a turbulent state. We really do need to take note of this uncomfortable state of ours within us. They were the same. But when the Prophet went to them, Allah was introduced to them outside the fold of their religion. The Prophet did not go with a packaged religion to them. He simply went with the notion of one God and emphasizing to them that, look, you are in a very precarious position. If you do not sort yourselves out, you will have wasted this opportunity of life. And what awaits you before, what awaits you after and beyond this life is not something very good. When he told them this and he preached to them, it was so effective that they suddenly awoke from within, that deep level from where they used to get in touch with their God internally. Now, that is what we do as well. We get in touch with our God that is internally with us. But like them, we then fall back into our old ways. But at this point, when the Prophet introduced them to Allah, it was outside their religion. So they knew it is something new. And the way he introduced God was not through ceremonies, not through a packaged religion with its theologies, what gives them their identities, what makes them different to others. What he introduced to them was a religion in which they awoke to God and they lived through God. Now, the phenomenal thing the Prophet did was, he said, look, I have a solution for you. God says that he will forgive everything. He will wipe the slate clean, fully clean, with the proviso that henceforth you live with God and through God. What that did was, it connected the inner being with God. They became conscious of God, and God became present to them. And that is what brought this transformation within them. They were able to rectify their ills and their wrongs. The Sahaba were very good people. They were noble people. But like any human community, there are good and there are bad, and there are good who do bad things, and people have different phases. But the very genuine first Muslims, if you study them, you will see a full transformation within their souls. They said, if God is forgiving me and wiping my slate clean, then now I will become mindful of God at every breath, at every instance. Now, before I explain that, they also still made mistakes because of their former dispositions and their habit. And they were predisposed to make these mistakes. But the Blessed Prophet, through his infinite wisdom, he said, yes, you will make mistakes, but God is most forgiving. Become mindful of him immediately, so he forgives you. And in return for that evil, the Quran said, do something good. For that good will cancel out that evil. But for them, that good was not merely an act of leveling the calculation of good and evil. Good for them meant through the presence of God, doing something for God, which is felt deeply within, that this act was a selfless act for God, as selfless as it could be. So it was very effective when the Prophet said, God says that he will clean your slate, start afresh. Now, for them, the preaching of the Prophet was so effective that they felt the wrath of what was going to come. And they felt how much they could miss out on if they didn't take this opportunity. So they didn't take it lightly. When they decided to say La ilaha illallah, it meant an inner commitment that I shall abide by the dictates of La ilaha illallah, and I shall live by what is pleasing to God. Now they asked the Prophet, well, what is pleasing to God? Beyond a certain point that the Prophet explained, look after those who are vulnerable, who are unwell, who are suffering from poverty, the orphans. Forgive each other. Beyond all of that, the Prophet finally said to them that good is what brings comfort to your souls and your heart. You will know it straight away. It's a state of enlightenment. And here the Prophet said the same thing that his dear brothers, the past prophets, had said before him. Whether we acknowledge them as prophets or not, like the blessed Isa and Musa and Ibrahim, we acknowledge them as prophet, but the blessed Buddha, he also said the same thing. Zoroaster said the same thing. So he said, look, whatever brings comfort to the heart, peace and enlightenment, that is pleasing to God. That is your yardstick. So here now, what they understood was, well, for me to be consumed by this state of rage that I have inside me. It's not a befitting state. Let it go. For me to think ill of another is not a befitting state. Let it go. For me to entertain ill feelings for another is not a wholesome state. Let it go. For me to be so greedy internally is not a befitting state, because on the one hand, I say I trust Allah. He is my sustainer. On the other hand, I'm so preoccupied by worries of my sustenance. Let it go. For me to be fearful of sickness and death is inconsistent with my acknowledgement that my God does what is best for me. And if God destines death for me or sickness, then surely my parental God, who loves me so much, knows what he is doing. Let go of these apprehensions. Free yourself. If God destines the best of destinies for me after I hand over the reins of my life to him, then why should I struggle against destiny? Embrace his destiny. In fact, these are the very sentiments resonated in the words of Imam Hussein when he so wonderfully states, "O Allah, allow me not to seek the delay of a destiny that you have chosen to hasten. O Lord, allow me not to plead for the hastening of a destiny that you have chosen to delay. Allow me to embrace your destiny as it is." Once they said, La ilaha illallah, for them the fundamental was Allah. Belonging to Allah, connecting to Allah inwardly, becoming conscious of God so deeply that God accompanied them in their affairs, in their attitudes, in their thinking. As opposed to them constantly reverting to their previous habits, as was their case in their previous religion. Now, God is no longer confined to the temple or to the mosque. He is not to be found in prayers only. God is one who lives with you. You breathe with him, you walk with him, you talk to him. He becomes an integral part of you. That was the religion to which Prophet brought them, not a religion of ceremonies. The ceremonies were given slowly afterwards, that for consumption of the collective identity, pray like this. But your prayer is your God-centered prayer. When you make your prayer and you recite Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the surah, the whole of that surah is a beautiful prayer. Reflect upon it and mean it. It's a very God-centered prayer. So the wonderful thing that happened to them was that they were liberated from a religion that did not bring them that state of liberation. And they were brought into that very simplistic understanding of living with God, being conscious of God, living it to God, and becoming liberated. This to them did not mean that they become passive and idle. No, the Prophet taught, change your destinies, carve out the best destiny that you can, explore the heavens and the earth, reveal the treasures of nature, exploit it all, use it for your benefit, but inwardly be contented with the decree of God. Inwardly, do not live for the world. Conquer the world, but do not live for it. Do not become attached to it, because your heart is aligned with God. As you create, the relationship with your God is to become intensified. As you explore nature, you are to find God everywhere. As you create a system of economy, your intention is to feed the hungry stomachs for the sake of your parent, your Lord, your God. When you create system of governance, your whole aim is to bring the best out in people. That is how he transformed his community. Now I know, as human beings, we have tendency to fall back into our previous ways, and therefore we need constant reminders. So the Muslim community, obviously, after that state, fell back into the same mindset. And this is where we are today. Our religion is not really yielding because the central component of religion is missing. And that is being actively connected with God. Now, that needs inner commitment, inner resolve, and we can do that right now. We can say La ilaha illallah and make a fresh start and start remolding our lives. I'll stop there as my time has finished.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. If anybody has questions, they can use the raise hand button or they can message me privately. Sheikh, I had a question from somebody. Just sorry, give me a second. It's on my phone. So it says, forgiving and forgetting is ideal and one can easily forgive, but how does one forget?
So once we forgive, we tend to stop thinking about that hurt. Once we stop thinking about the hurt, the heart soon and slowly loses the memory. You see, the heart retains memory emotionally. And these emotions are always flaring up. And then we think about it and we reaffirm that emotion. So once we say we have forgiven, the heart will remember that emotion again and generate it. But the mind will say, at this point, by mind, I mean the mind operating through the physical brain. The mind will say, I have forgiven. I will not entertain that thought again. So the heart starts losing its memory. But at every state of the heart, but at every state of the heart losing its memory, it becomes more and more enlightened and filled with the light of God and becomes more and more expansive until forgiveness becomes its nature and by default.
Thank you. And are there any other questions? You can use the raise hands. Check. There was another question that said, how can we earn contentment?
So it also comes through being focused with God and losing inner attachments, expectations, ill feelings, grudges. As we become God-centered, slowly, slowly the heart starts losing its attachments, its memories, its emotions. And in that process, we find expanse and contentment with God. You see, in the spiritual wayfaring, there comes a moment where God reveals himself. When God reveals himself, the heart feels the taste of the beauty of union with God. And when that happens, the heart does not want anything else. It does not want distractions. It does not want hatred. It does not want love of other than God. It is so beautifully content in the song of God and in the praise of God. But these are slow steps. Until we take them slowly, we will not get them. But once we start taking them slowly, we will get them. The heart has to lose distinction between black and white, Muslim and non-Muslim, its own hate and its own love. It has to lose everything. When the heart loses everything, then the possessor of the throne shall occupy his throne.